Welcome to the show, guys. Joseph Robert Camo, the Fantasy Football Counselor. Got a very special episode here for you guys today. I want to have a one-on-one conversation with you guys, or if there's multiple people listening in the car, that's fine. But I want to talk to you guys specifically on a personal level on how to win at fantasy football, predicated on the fantasy football podcast that you listen to. So what makes the best fantasy football podcast? How is listening to a fantasy football podcast actually going to help you? Yes, this episode is about the best fantasy football podcast. Now, I may be a little bit biased to myself in the sense that I 100% with absolute certainty believe and know for a fact, because I live and breathe fantasy football, that this is the best fantasy football podcast. Now, I'm not here to brag. The purpose of this podcast is to inform and advise you that the information out there that's being given, okay, is inaccurate, okay? It's not going to help you guys win your leagues. And I want to deep dive into this because to me, I wholeheartedly want you to win your league. That is my mission. That is why I started doing a podcast for fantasy football back in 2016, is because I really didn't like the way things were done. I didn't like the advice that was given. I thought it was misinformation in regards to fantasy football analysis. I came up with the consensus because it's consensus. And I'm going to dive into that. And I'm going to dive into things you should look for if you're listening to other podcasts that are not this one, okay? I do not endorse any other podcasts. In fact, I wholeheartedly believe I cover everything that you need. I cover waiver wires. I cover breakouts. I talk about sleepers. I talk about full fantasy football draft prep. I'm the full solution under the sun for you guys to win your leagues. And that's why I created the 16-round draft solution. So in this episode, I want you guys to take away some real-life practical advice that's really going to help you guys win your league and get that edge over the competition, okay? So things to look for to make you guys more aware of what the fantasy football industry is about and what's going on, and why this, the Fantasy Football Counselor podcast, is the best fantasy football podcast. Why I created this outside looking in originally, and how I created this to, topple and destroy the advice and the podcasts that are out there right now. So I want to dive into that. It's a very important episode for me to get this information out to you guys, because I value you guys as listeners and as the Council Nation and Lion Mentality fans. Okay, guys? So if you guys are new to the channel, okay, and you came across this, make sure you guys do click that subscribe button. It really does help the channel. Click the subscribe button. Make sure you are subscribed. Thumbs up really helps the channel as well. And guys, there is a sponsor for the show, manscaped.com. Use promo code SHOWERLINE20. Save yourself 20% on some amazing trimmers, groomers, amazing product, including the Lawnmower 4.0. You got to try it. I love the shampoo. I love the body wash. That's what I particularly use, and the Lawnmower 4.0. But you can go browse, try their underwear. I've tried their underwear as well. Super comfortable. Your balls don't stick around, stick to your legs and stuff like that. It's really comfortable, okay? So honestly, try it out. Manscaped.com. Use code SHOWERLION. Go do that right now. All right, so let's dive into this, guys. It's very important that we talk about the best fantasy football podcast and what makes the best fantasy football podcast. And here are some elements that make it, okay? Accuracy. And I really believe this is the most important. And again, I don't really want to toot my own horn here, but everybody else, every other podcast I listened to prior to me starting this, and I don't listen to other podcasts, but I tune in. I'm aware. I'm aware of who's out there a little bit to some degree. Some of the guys that started before me, I am aware of what they're doing. And they're not accurate. I don't care what anybody says. You know why I know they're not accurate? Is because they're taking last year's top finishers, okay, all the guys that finish on top, and they're telling you to draft them again that same order. And, okay, I'm going to dive into this a little bit more, but I want to go over again the key elements of what you want out of a podcast. Number one is accuracy. Number two is information. Obviously, you're there for information Number three is education. Number four is the host. You want a good host, right? You want somebody that you can relate to, someone who's real, keeps it real with you. Okay? You don't want any fluff. You want it to get to the point, right? And obviously you want some entertainment. All right? So again, I wanted to create something going back to 2016 that, surpasses everything. I wanted to give practical advice that worked for me as a fan. I was a big fantasy football fan, always won my leagues. I came second, I think, 1 year. I was so upset because I always thought outside the box. Well, everybody was going with the mainstream consensus, what I call the consensus, I was out there digging in a little bit deeper, diving in a little bit farther. And I found that fantasy football podcasts weren't helping me. They just were not helping me. I'm like, okay, I got this magazine from the newsstand. It's not helping me. What do I do? So I created the Fantasy Football Counselor podcast is because I really genuinely wanted to help people. And it's funny because when I came up with that name, I was probably at the third or fourth, maybe. I think only one or two are still around. The first account I saw, can't remember what it was called. It was like Fantasy Football Wizard or something weird name like that. They're gone. They're gone. The other two accounts that are on Instagram, I was like the third or fourth. I was one of the first adapters on Instagram, and I came up with a Fantasy Football Counselor name. I'm like, that's a weird name. Like, it's like, counselor. Like, what is that? And since then, there's been so many other names. There's like Fantasy Football Mathematician. There's Fantasy Football Boxer. There's Fantasy Football Woodsman. There's Fantasy Football, I don't know, man, scientist. Like, there's so many different variations. Everybody tried their hand at fantasy football, but I really think there's only there isn't any guys I can name that do it really, really well. And the big reason for that is because they want to play it safe. And that's the biggest problem. And that's why the Fantasy Football Counselor podcast is the best fantasy football podcast, because I believe in my heart of hearts that it's all about you winning. That's the point of a fantasy football podcast. Yes, it's entertainment, and I do that on Instagram. I do it. I say players suck. I'm in there. I mean, I'm entertaining. I keep people entertained. But the main thing I want to do and accomplish, and what makes the best fantasy football podcast, is that you're actually helping people win. And I think that's the biggest problem. Okay? I mean, the downloads are there for my podcast. We're in the millions of downloads. Okay? I'm number one when it comes to that. I'm number one in a lot of things. And again, my main mission is that you guys win your podcast. And this is the biggest problem in the industry. Nobody actually cares about you winning your league. Nobody actually cares about you winning your league. I want to repeat that for the third time. Nobody actually cares, except for the counselor, that you actually win your leagues. And that's why I created the 16-round draft solution, because I wanted to create something that is non-consensus. So my friend and I were sitting back like 4 years ago. He's like, hey, Joe, can you help me with my draft? Can you actually show up on my draft? Can you call me during the draft? I'm like, listen, man, I'm busy. I can't. Like, I don't even know when your draft is, what time. Like, I don't even know if I'll be available then. He's like, okay, well, hold on a second. Let me get a pen and paper. Can you tell me who to draft in the first round? I'm like, cool, yeah, no problem. I like XYZ player. I think this player is being overdrafted in the first round. I think you should omit him. I think he's due for a decline. So I went through the first round. I was like, okay, can you tell me second round? I'm okay, cool. Second round, I sat there and I'm like, okay, well, I like this player. This guy's value. I think you can get this guy in the third round. I think people will sleep on him. And he's like, okay, tell me third round. I'm like, hold on a second. I'm like, this is cool. I'm like, I'm giving you all my optimal players to draft in each round based on the ADP, because that's what everybody does. They'll draft on the average draft position on the consensus rankings. And that's where all of these fantasy football sites where you draft your team and host your leagues, they're all going to be predicated on ADP rankings, the consensus, the consensus rankings. So I'm like, let's beat the system. Instead of going with the flow and going with the herd, because you're not going to beat everybody else if you're doing what everyone else does, right? So to beat them, you got to think outside the box. So if I can get, like, for example, right, back in 2021, everyone was drafting Mahomes round 2. And he's okay, but I'm like, hey, you can get Herbert round 5, right? Or Josh Allen, whatever. And then they slid up, right? The year after, they were drafted very high. And I spotted out rookies. Jamar Chase I was getting for value, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown finished right 21st amongst wide receivers. I was getting him for the right value. I told everybody to stash him, where he was ranked 70th plus on the consensus rankings. Najee Harris was outside the top 10 amongst all running back rankings. I told you to grab him in the first round, maybe make him your first overall pick. He finished third amongst running backs in PPR. Okay, the volume was there. It's about skating to where the puck is going to be. Not, you got to know, you got to anticipate. You don't skate where the puck is, you skate to where you know it's going to project to be. If you play billiards, if you play pool, right? If you hit a ball a certain way, you're going to hit it that way, it's going to go that way. You project, you see forward. In chess, you're 5 steps ahead. Now I'm comparing it to a game because fantasy football is a game. So I implore you guys that when you are listening to other fantasy football podcasts, don't waste your time, because they're just going to tell you to draft last year's players in that particular order pretty much again with a couple of variances, right? Whereas me, I'm not trying to be different to be different. I'm not trying to be the best to be the best. I am offering the best possible advice and analysis so that you guys win. My mission is that you guys win. That's the goal. Okay. So I cover the accuracy. I cover the entertainment because I'm outspoken. Let's put it that way. It's, some people watch for the entertainment value as well. If you haven't followed the Instagram, go follow at Fantasy Football Counselor. You know what I'm talking about. The information, you're getting their information, you're getting your waiver wires, you're getting your rankings, you're getting that information. You're getting the news information. And then host, I'm here with you. I'm relating. And another thing that bothers me with other podcast hosts and other fantasy football influencers is they don't engage. They don't follow. You do a comment. They do a comment. You do a comment on their Instagram or whatever, and they don't reply back. I mean, I just think that's ignorant. Okay, so it's just about liking the host. That's very important. But at the end of the day, it's about winning. All right. So again, the best fantasy football podcast is the perfect combination of all this, from information to accuracy to entertainment to liking the right host to winning information. It's all there. All right. And getting the right guests. I had Deebo Samuel on my show, right? It's about getting people on the show. It's about interacting and making it interactive. That's very important because I really feel that the mainstream and other top podcasts lack that humility of getting people on the show, keeping it entertaining, keeping it fun. And that's what I'm here for you guys for. Okay, guys? So again, I want to do a quick rant here. I want to do a quick episode here on obviously the best fantasy football podcast. And I implore you guys, make sure you guys do subscribe. If you're not following, make sure you follow on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you get a podcast. Leave a 5-star rating review on iTunes. I appreciate it. But again, guys, this isn't just like my toot my own horn here episode. This is about informing you guys, making you aware that there's so much misinformation out there in the fantasy football community and in reality for that matter. And I keep it real. And I'm just one of you guys. I'm just one guy that's really good at fantasy football, does a lot of studying, that came on, created a platform, and happens to be the biggest platform in the fantasy football space after 5 years of grinding. So again, guys, I appreciate you guys. And I genuinely want you guys to win. Make sure you guys do get that 16-round draft solution and you're subscribed. I'm honestly here to give you guys winning advice and provide the best fantasy football podcast for you guys. All right, guys? This is not your cookie cutter rankings. It's not your mainstream stuff. This is winning, accurate advice to help you guys win. It's proven. I've got the testimonials. I've got everything. I've got everything for you guys to win, all the tools, and 16 rounds does it for you guys. All right, guys? Make sure you guys are subscribed. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my rant. Hopefully it gave you a little bit of information, some insight that the mainstream and the top podcasts and 99% of the people giving fantasy football advice don't care if you guys win or lose. All right, guys, subscribe. Thank you for being here. I'm out.